small business owners intro to legal issues 101. So everything from incorporating the proper setup, the proper annual maintenance for if you incorporate contract issues, commercial leases, which is part of that. We're also going to go over some intellectual property issues to go over the basics of that, as well as look at business succession planning. What's your goal with your business? So starting with incorporating goes to why do we incorporate? Personal liability protection. So 3 main ways that you can protect yourself from personal liability is having really good contracts, which we're going to go over. Incorporating your business or forming an LLC, which is going to separate out personal liability for yourself. And the third is insurance. I'm not an insurance broker, but I do want to bring it up because even though you incorporate, even though you have good contracts, you do still need good insurance coverage to protect yourself as well. So business insurance, there's a few different types, and these are things that you can talk to your insurance broker about. But there's general liability insurance, which is about everybody is going to need no matter what type of business you have. Professional malpractice insurance, depending on the type of business you have. If you're a professional corporation like myself, I have professional malpractice. I also have general liability. And then cyber theft is also a good one to have if you have any of your clients' information. And of course, talking to you, product liability insurance. And that's actually one I just recommended to a client as well this week who's creating another product. And I told her she needs to do product liability insurance. So let's go over the different ways that you can start a business. There's many ways, as you can see. The easiest is the sole proprietor. Then we're going to talk about general partnership, a limited partnership, a limited liability partnership, the C Corp, S Corp, and LLC. Those last 3 are the main ways that we're going to be talking about, spending most of our time talking on those 3. So the easiest, but also the ones with the littlest or no liability protection is the sole proprietorship, general partnership, limited partnership, and limited liability partnership. These aren't used very much anymore these days except for the sole proprietorship or general partnership. Sole proprietorship is when you just start up a business. You keep it does not separate it from yourself, so you have personal liability for everything. You just go down to the county office, file, I think you have to publish in a newspaper for a few weeks, and then you're set up. It goes under your own social security number, so there's no separate taxation. Everything still goes on your own personal tax return. General partnership is obviously if you have a partner, one or more partners. With general partnership, the problem is, again, you're just going to go and register with the county. There's not any difficult setup. Maybe you have a partnership agreement. But the cons are you're going to have what's called joint and several liability. So what that means is you're not only liable for the things you do that may be negligent, but you're going to be liable for what your partner does. So if your partner does something, it's liability on you as well. The limited partnership kind of carves that out a little bit. The pros is that the limited partners are not going to have liability. But limited partners do not have a say in the management of the company. So if they're like a silent partner who are just investing money, they're not going to have liability. But there's always going to be a general partner who will. So again, there's still liability for that general partner. And then the limited liability partnership is all partners are liable, but only for their own actions. So that means there's no joint and several, so you're not going to be liable for your other partners. But again, there's still liability going to the owners of the business. So that's why generally, I don't deal with these. These are easy to set up. People usually do these on their own if they're going to do them. I may do a partnership agreement, which would be the only legal thing that you need done. But because there is no liability protection, I'm not usually involved in these. But the 3 that give you protection from personal liability is the C Corp, the S Corp, and the LLC. So these are the ones that you form through the state of Illinois, not through the county. The C Corp we usually get rid of right away because it has double taxation. So anyone here wants to pay extra money, then they have to the IRS. Not me either. So the pro is it separates out liability from you and the business, but the con is with the C Corp, you're going to have double taxation. So what that means is the corporation pays taxes, has its own tax return, is going to pay taxes. And then when the shareholders or owners are paid, they pay taxes on their personal tax returns. So what we generally look at is the S Corp and the LLC. So does that answer, at least you got to one question I know we were talking about before. The S Corp and the LLC. So the S Corp is set up the same way as the C Corporation. The only difference is how you are taxed. So you're still going to have the personal liability protection. You're still going to do the same articles of incorporation in the state of Illinois, but it's an additional filing with the IRS, the 2553 that someone was talking about to me earlier.
What advantages would be for the C Corp?
Usually it is if you don't qualify for the S Corp or you don't want to do an LLC. So if you're a foreign citizen, you don't qualify. If there's 100 or more shareholders, you don't qualify. If you're doing passive income, which is like rental income or owning property, you would not qualify for the S Corp. But then you would probably actually be more better off with the LLC than the S Corp. But if you wanted to go public or it's easier to sell shares, then you might go with the C Corporation.
And converting from one to the other in any direction, is that possible?
C Corp and S Corp you can because it's only a tax election. You can't really convert an LLC to a C Corp or S Corp, but you can have an LLC taxed as an S Corp after the fact, but you're never going to change it from an LLC. And so you're always going to have the different liability protections with the LLC, and you're always going to have the higher filing fees of the state for the annual report. Yes?
What is the what is the more popular of the two, S Corp, LLC?
S Corp is the most popular. I haven't gone through everything over it yet, but it is the most popular, and I'll get to that in a second. Yes?
Did I understand you to say something about if it was real estate you're involved in, that would disqualify you from an S Corp?
It depends if it's passive income. If you're actively involved in managing the corporation or the LLC, then you would still qualify as an S Corp.
Okay.
But if you only rent it and have someone else do the management, then it's passive income and you would not qualify. Because with an S Corp, no more than 25% of your income can be passive income, which means you're basically just collecting money, owning or renting an asset. Okay? So again, we're going through this, the C Corp, again, it's paying the corporate taxes. With the S Corp, there is a corporate tax return, and same with an LLC. They're both pass-throughs. So even though you're paying, filing a corporate level tax return, you're not paying taxes on that. What you do is you get a Schedule K-1, which is like a W-2 if you work for another company, and that's what's being reported on your personal tax return. So you're not paying the corporate level tax, just whatever it is that your personal tax bracket is on that part of the income.
So does that assume that all profit is passed through, the company has some at the end of the year?
Right.
There would still be no tax on that, or?
It's not a corporate level tax.
Okay.
It goes through, and we're going to go through right now and how it works a little bit more and how you save the money with taxes. So generally, if you're an LLC, you're paying 100% of the self-employment tax on all of your income. And I'll go through that in a slide or two. We're going to go through an example, but there is a self-employment tax of 15.3%. With the S Corp, it cuts that in half to 7.65%, and this is how that works. It really is just in how you're accounting for it, almost like in QuickBooks and your payroll taxes. And so this is why it's good to work with a good accountant who can explain this to you and help you figure it out and get your filings done correctly so you can save the right amount of money. But you take the profit for the business, again, and that's all of your income minus all of your expenses. If you have profit left over, then you are going to be paying some taxes on it. You pay yourself a salary, which is half of that income, and the other half goes to you as a distribution as shareholder, so it's not salary. So that's why on half of that income, you're paying those payroll taxes, FICA, Social Security, and such. And the other half, you're only paying your personal tax bracket on it. So that's how you're having that 15.3% self-employment tax. And it is really in how you're accounting for it in QuickBooks and in your tax filings. But how you're running the business, it does not affect that. Yes, Beth?
The 50% number, is that because that's what is deemed reasonable compensation?
Yes, and you're right to bring that up. There is reasonable compensation in your field. So generally for new businesses, it's a 50-50 split because maybe you're not making that much. But as you grow older, then your accountant works with you to make sure that that number is the correct number. So it should really be either 50% or approximately what someone else in your field is making. Okay, so the S Corp versus LLC, the difference is both are pass-through. Both give you very similar personal liability protection. There are minor differences, but in general, they're pretty even in my opinion. They both have risk of personal liability if you don't maintain them. Some people believe, and even some other attorneys say because by state law, LLCs, you're not going to be held personally liable for failing to follow corporate formalities. That means like not doing the annual maintenance, not doing your annual report. However, when it gets to the courts, they're saying you're not treating the company separate from yourself, and they're giving personal liability to people if you're not doing that annual. So that's why I say it really is actually equal. You should be doing those, the annual minutes and all of your paperwork for either type of business. The S Corp is the only one that gives you that tax advantage, 7.65% tax savings, and that's why it is the most popular one to pick. Because it gives you liability protection, but it's the only one that gives you the tax advantages.
Isn't there another tax advantage in that you can take a distribution from an S corp and not pay FICA tax?
That's correct, yeah, you don't pay the payroll taxes on the distribution, right, and that's how you save that taxes. And the LLC, it can offer more flexibility if you're having partners, because with the S Corp, you're issuing stock, and so if your partnership percentage ownership, you're planning on changing it from year to year, it's a little bit more difficult because you have to sell the stock back and forth. That's an unusual situation. With an LLC, you'd just be able to modify the operating agreements and not have to go through the stock sales. It offers more options for claiming losses, so if you're really going to be claiming a lot of losses in your first several years, especially if you're like a manufacturing business, then you may want to go with the LLC and elect to be an S Corp later on. But it does have higher filing fees and annual fees in the state of Illinois. They are working on that and trying to get it, consistent across the board between both, but they've been working on that for years and it's come of it yet in Illinois. So let's go over an example. Jack and Jill start a business. They want to start a software development business. They're both U.S. citizens. They're going to own 50-50. Should they start an S Corp or an LLC? So if they do an LLC, they're going to have liability protection. But they're going to have a self-employment tax of 15.3% on 100% of the income. So if they earn $100,000 in the first year in profits, they're going to be paying $15,300 in taxes for that first year. If they do an S Corp, they're going to have, again, equal liability protection, but their tax liability is going to be capped. So on that $100,000, it's going to be $7,650. So you can see where the savings comes in. The more and more money you make, the more tax savings you're going to have with the S Corp. Yes, you had a question, sir?
Yes, what are the circumstances where it would be to the advantage of a person to do LLC versus S?
Again, if you are a foreign citizen, so you don't qualify for the S Corp, it's usually if you don't qualify for the S Corp. So you're a foreign citizen, you have 100 or more shareholders, which is, I never had clients that big. Or if you're doing passive income. So I do it for people who are maybe flipping houses, and actually that's a separate situation because I would recommend they do an LLC with an S Corp on the side. For managing properties. So if you're going to have rental homes, you usually own the asset in an LLC, and then you manage it in the S Corp, so it separates out liability from the assets. So that's a little bit more complicated, but the best way to set that up. But if they're just owning the property and not doing anything else in that situation, the LLC would work. But again, in that situation, you have the income is coming through the S Corp, so you gain the tax advantage, separate liability protection. But with the LLC, you're just owning an asset and not earning income, so it doesn't really affect them tax-wise that way. So generally that's it. I've had another client who did a investment club. Though they were actively in it, they did an LLC instead. So those are some situations. Usually it involves property, real estate. Or a foreign citizen, I've done for those too. But a lot of people come to me and they've already formed an LLC because they didn't know the difference. So then I send it to the accountant to do an S Corp election for the next year if they missed the deadline.
The SOC would be stands for anything for S Corp?
It's the chapters in the IRS code.
Okay.
Yeah, so C Corp. Yeah, the chapter C of the code. So once you're incorporated, there's a whole slew of things you have to do afterwards, which a lot of people don't know. If you call the Secretary of State, they're really not even allowed to tell you all of this because it is legal advice, so the hands are tied. So they'll just tell you, file the articles of incorporation and you're incorporated. But there's a lot of things you have to do afterwards. And again, I say, take it as you should do it for both the S Corp and the LLC. Because again, even though the LLC, you're not required to do this by state law, the courts are saying you have to. So just keep that in mind. So when you incorporate, I do like a whole corporate book, looks kind of like this. When I incorporate a client, I include this in my services because I don't want anyone to skip that process. It's always going to be done. We need to have this done. So you're looking at minutes, board resolutions, bylaws, shareholder agreements if you're having a partner, operating agreements if it's an LLC, stock certificates, membership certificates of an LLC, same idea, just different names because of the different roles, and also an indemnification agreement. So we're going to go over what each of these is. So after filing your articles of incorporation, I start working on the corporate book. So I do the minutes. And in here, what minutes are, it's paper that's, we're going to be setting up the first minutes of the shareholder meeting, the first minutes of the board of directors meeting. So what we're gonna be doing is appointing who the members or the shareholders are gonna be elected, but electing who the members of the board of directors are going to be. Electing who the officer is going to be, the president, secretary, treasurer, if you're gonna have a vice president, so all that's done in the minutes. Determining election cycles, are we gonna do every year, are we gonna stagger elections on a board? I usually only do that for a nonprofit, staggering elections. Approving bank accounts, so you do have to have a board resolution for a bank account. So all of these are done in the first set of minutes for opening a business. So a resolution, it's a piece of paper, has the label of what it is at the top, and then you're going to say, I have a paragraph where it states the state statute. You can find samples of these online, just make sure they're Illinois ones, if you are gonna do it that way. So it's, you can just do a consented meeting, so you don't have to actually form an election and give notice of meetings and such. So if you, usually for the smaller business owners, I do just do a consent and they sign the consent as part of the minutes. So what it is showing that the owners are treating the corporate structure as separate from themselves, because you can't just go around and electing directors and stuff without, doing it in your proper role as shareholder and as director. Sorry, do you have a
Do
question?
these all apply to a single proprietorship?
Only if you're incorporated.
So
If you're
if you're an
a
S
C corp, S
corp,
corp,
they
or
don't.
LLC.
If you're an S corp, they don't.
Yeah, you have to do this.
Okay.
Yeah, I myself, I'm a sole proprietor, sorry, an S corp with one owner. And yes, you do still have to do these every year. It's short, simple, at least when I do them, and you just sign, but it's important to do.
So you just basically write minutes for your thoughts? I mean, if you're the only person in the business,
Well, what you're saying is that, these people showed up, and if
It's
it's
just
a
you.
consent, then it's just a consent. It's not an actual meeting, it's just reporting that the action was taken. So you say, like, if we're doing DBA, so electing a DBA for the corporation, an assumed name, so separate name, you would say resolve that the officers of the corporation are authorized to elect a DBA through the Illinois Secretary of State, as approved by us, and a copy of them are attached. So whenever you're approving something, you put a copy of it behind it, and saying that the officers can take whatever actions are necessary to institute this action, and then you're dating it and signing it, and putting it in the corporate book.
Is it the same for not-for-profits as?
Yes, they still have to do that. It's very important for the board elections, because usually for nonprofits, it's hard to keep people on the board.
Yeah.
So that's changing a lot, so you do have to keep track of who's on the board and who's not. And then once board directors leave, you usually have to make sure that they're signing things before they leave the nonprofit, because you can't go back, years later trying to find these people. It's difficult. So these are some samples of when you need to do a board resolution. If you're signing a commercial lease, like I said, opening a bank account, if you're purchasing real estate, any change in officers or directors. Those are the most common ones. If you're approving a major contract, not just general contract, but something major, like if you're hiring something for $100,000 manufacturing process, you want to make sure you get that approved by the board. If you are changing stock or issuing additional stock, you want to get board approval for that. So I always say, when in doubt, do a board resolution. You're not going to get dinged for having extras. You will get dinged for not having them. So why these are so important is if you are ever sued, it's one of the first things they ask for is the corporate book, because it's the easiest way to pierce the corporate veil and get to you for personal liability. It's because you're not treating, it's kind of an exchange by state law. You're getting personal liability protection in exchange for doing this paperwork, in exchange for setting it up this way. So if you're not doing that, they can pierce the corporate veil and get you personal assets. Yes?
From your experience, what is the legal climate in Illinois in terms of, are there tons of people out there suing small business owners under the auspices of piercing the corporate veil? Is that really hard to do?
It depends what you did. What did you do? How did you hurt someone? Do you have good insurance? Do you have too good of insurance? Because if you have too good insurance, you almost put a target on your back. So you want to have good policy, but not too good of a policy. So really, you're always going to have people who don't pay you, people who want you to pay more. Maybe you're having contract breaches. Either you're a client end or you're the service person end. So it's going around a lot. I try to settle these out in court for clients. I don't do court work, but it's coming up more and more often, unfortunately. So yeah, have all your I's dotted, your T's crossed, then you don't have to worry about those things. But usually things do settle out of court, we try to collect on action, so just settle it. But somebody's like, I have a client right now who's looking for, she got bad product, and she's looking to collect $150,000 from him. And she tried to settle for a lesser amount, he's not even willing to agree to anything, so they're getting ready to go to litigation. But you can imagine for a small business owner, that could put her out of business. She needs to collect on that in order to rebuild the business and get good product in so she can start over. So it happens, so you have to be very careful. So again, how to. So for most companies, it's a very simple thing. It can be a one-page form, especially if you're just doing like annual minutes. It's going to be 2 pages. You're going to have one for the board of directors and one for the shareholders resolution. So that's every year. For board resolutions throughout the year, again, generally 1 page. I even say to people, usually what I do is when I file an annual report for clients, that's when it's time to go ahead and catch up on those board resolutions. So at least once a year, you should go through and make sure everything's documented. I've gone back as far as 20 years to recreate someone's corporate books, so it's better late than never, but do it before you sue it or before you become liable for something.
Is there good references that you'll recommend that, every year you make sure you're, this is kind of foreign to me that I'm doing all the things each year, or is that part of the packet? Obviously, when you get that packet to us, if you would.
Yeah, I mean,
we'd have
generally
that.
when someone is my client, I remind them on an annual basis. I tell them the Secretary of State is supposed to send you a notice when it's time for your annual report with them, but they don't tell you it's time to do your annual minutes because that's your internal paperwork. People are like, who do I file these with? They're not filed with anyone, they're placed in your corporate book, but you have them. And just a practice tip, I say, make copies, make electronic copies, fire safe copies. Because I've had people lose them in floods, a partner's left with them and they disappeared, or, I've had some destroyed in fires, and I've had copies of them. So I always tell clients, if you want to, I'll be your external backup, give me the copies after you sign it. You guys should be scanning them too, just to keep them safe. But yeah, when people are my clients, we remind them every year, and then we ask them if they need any of these updated, because I include that in my annual report service. And then when I give them the corporate book, I have a checklist, and it's, okay, I'm incorporated, now what, is what it's called, and it's all the things that you need to know. Whether clients read it or not, I can't help, but these are things that need to know. So any questions on minutes? Okay, so the next item is bylaws. So if I'm going through that corporate book in the beginning, I have my little tabs. So first is the articles, and then I have minutes, and then I have my bylaws that keep everything nice and neat. And the bylaws are the rules by how you're going to run your company. So it kind of defines what are the role and responsibilities of all the officers and directors, what are they doing for the company. Even if you are the only person in the company, like myself, you legally have different roles, you have different responsibilities. And so if you breach one of those responsibilities in a different way, you have different consequences. So you want to make sure that these are all done. It tells you how to remove an officer or director, very important. If you have a partner who's also in the business. How to resign, what are your terms, when are you going to re-elect, how you can get a loan, who can get a loan, who's going to sign for contracts, who's going to have banking rights. So again, especially if you have partners, it's very important to lay that all out ahead of time. And what is the purpose of the organization? What are you going to be doing? So that's the bylaws. It's generally just an agreement that is signed, but if people have issues, especially with partners, or something comes up, I say, what do your bylaws say? And you go back and you read those. And usually, when you sign those, that is the first question I said is, did you sign it? And then, okay, let's go back and read, what does it say, and how can we resolve the situation that way? So it's good to have those set up, especially if you have another partner. So that brings us to shareholder agreements. If you are going to go into business with anyone that is not your spouse, very important to have a shareholder agreement. If your spouse is and you divorce, it's going to go through all the divorce, so just keep that in mind. But if you have a partner, you have to go through this. So you only need one if there are 2 or more partners in a business. If you're the sole owner, you're not going to have to worry about shareholder agreement. It's not required, but highly recommended. And again, whenever I've had shareholder disputes, first thing I say is, let's go read the shareholder agreement. Did you sign it? Okay, good. What does it say? And let's try to resolve the situation that way. So it goes over situations, even if partners are getting along great, but things come up. So what if a shareholder wants to sell? We want to have a right of first purchase in there for the other partners, so that they don't just sell to a third party and you're in business with someone you don't know. You want to always have the other partner have the option to buy those stock first. What if a shareholder dies? What's going to happen if they're incapacitated, they're in a car accident, they're out for 6 months, they're out for a year, and they're out permanently? What's gonna happen if someone is getting older and they start getting dementia? How do you handle that for your business? Whether the shareholder, I've had this happen, doesn't participate anymore and just goes AWOL. It's happened. You can't communicate with them, you can't locate them, they've moved, and you don't even know where they are. So if you don't have any shareholder agreement, how to deal with that? They're still getting a right to all the profit of your business because they're a shareholder, whether they're participating or not. So important to keep that in mind. When will dividends be paid? Usually we don't do dividends, we do distribution because of tax reasons, but some companies still want to have dividends. When will distributions be made? Who owns intellectual property? So in the instance of Jack and Jill, they're creating a software development company. What if Jack is putting in the money and Jill is doing the software development? Who's going to own the intellectual property of that software? Is it going to be Jill? Is it going to be the company? Is it going to be Jack? So we always have that defined in there. Can they compete if they leave the company, or if they're still with the company and open a separate one? We want to have that defined in there. Can they solicit? That means if they leave, can they take your employees or your clients with them when they leave? So we want to make sure there's some restrictions in there to protect the company. How do we add shareholders? If we want to add, someone wants to add a third partner and the other one doesn't, how do we resolve that? And what happens if we're closing the business? So all of those items are covered in that shareholder agreement. So you can imagine it's a pretty good agreement, and we want to make sure that everything is laid out. And I have a standard one, but usually we go through and we talk it through with both partners and make sure that it is what they want in the business. Any questions on the shareholder agreement? Okay. So operating agreement for the LLC. LLC is a little bit different just in this, how it's structured. So we have an operating agreement which combines the bylaws and the shareholder agreement together. So if you're just one person, you're just going to have a single member operating agreement which will leave out those shareholder issues. If you have more than one member of the LLC, it's going to combine the bylaws and the shareholder agreement together into that multi-member operating agreement. So it covers all of those same issues. Stock certificates. Who here has incorporated? Who has stock certificates? You do, very good.
No,
Oh, you don't?
not yet.
You don't need them. In Illinois, the state of Illinois does not require stock certificates. However, it's a very good idea to have them. First, it makes you look a lot more professional. Secondly, if you go for a bank loan, they want to see them. Sometimes even in setting up a bank account because it proves that you own the business. Also, if you go for like a minority business application or designation, they want to see those stock certificates. So even though, again, it's not required in the state of Illinois, it's a good idea to have them.
So on my articles of incorporation, I show that I have X amount of shares, but I don't actually have.
But the shareholder is not
QC.
listed on there. Shareholders are not listed on the articles of incorporation. If you read it, if you put your name on there, you may be on as registered agent, you may be on as director. But the shareholders, and again, because it's different rules, shareholders remain anonymous in the state of Illinois. For LLC, the members are actually listed on the Secretary of State website right away, but for corporations, they remain anonymous. So that's another little bit of a difference in the LLC versus S corp as well. So again, it looks professional. It is recommended you have them because it will come up later on as your business grows, and you may need to have those. You don't need to have a corporate seal. It's never required. It looks pretty. It looks nice. You don't need that either. An indemnification agreement. What that means is the statute only protects shareholders from personal liabilities when you incorporate or do an LLC. The officers and directors, and remember, even if it's the same person, different roles, they still have personal liability for what they do for the business. So what the indemnification does is it's a contract between the corporation itself and the officers and directors, and the corporation promises to protect you from personal liability for anything you do on behalf of the business. It does not, and nothing will cover you, not insurance, not incorporating, not anything from willful or wanton acts or negligence, or willful or wanton negligence or criminal acts. So there's always going to be liability for that. But if you make a general decision, someone gets hurt from it, or someone is affected financially by it, it will protect you. And that's also a way to make sure that as an officer and director, you're also covered on the insurance that you have for the business as well. Okay? So keeping your business and your personal finances separate. So you do not, one of the biggest no-nos and one of the easiest ways besides not having a corporate book of leasing liability protection is people are commingling assets. Everything's going through one bank account. They're not doing their accounting, they're not watching what's coming in and what's going on, and they're just taking cash out the drawer. You want to make sure you keep your QuickBooks or your accounting software up to date, even if you're using a simple spreadsheet. Keep it all up to date. You're going to have a separate business checking account if you want a separate business savings account. And you're going to have a separate business credit or debit card. So everything's going to be kept separate. Everything's going to be done under a tax ID number that's issued just for the corporation, not your personal social security number. Okay, so everything is separate. We're separating out personal liabilities, so we have to separate everything from ourselves and the business. Okay. Licensing, so if you incorporate, sorry to pick on you, Beth, but if you incorporate, did you get your business license?
No.
Did you know you needed to get one?
No.
Nobody knows this, so I'm covering this. So once you incorporate, you still need to get a business license, and that's from whatever village or city you listed as your company address. Some don't require it. So it depends. So you have to call your local village and your local city and see what's required. Chicago requires one for everything, and they are a pain in the butt to get them from. But in the suburbs, it's a lot easier. So just make sure you call and check to see if you need that. Late is better than never. So if you didn't get it, you can still get it later. Okay. State license. Certain kinds of businesses require state license. For me, like I have a professional license through the Supreme Court, but if you have like animal shelter or certain other things, you need to get a state license for doing that, or be registered as a professional corporation. It's kind of more detailed. I don't think it applies to anyone in here, but if you ever have questions on it, you can always call me. So any questions on that? Yes.
All the vendors you use in your business, they should be billing you under your business name.
Yes.
Correct?
Absolutely. All checks should be made to that name. If you get a 1099, it should be made out to the tax ID number for the corporation as well. Yes.
I don't know if this is a myth or if it's a reality, but I've had people who have signed without indicating their officer.
We're going to go over that.
You're going to talk about that?
Yeah, that's another big no-no. They definitely should be. Yeah.
And how about keeping them separate? Right now, I obviously don't have a business account. At what point?
As soon as you incorporate, because then you need the tax ID and the articles of incorporation to do the bank account.
Okay.
So those are the two
And
items.
so
you have
any
to
of the
give.
investments prior to incorporating will not be able to be deducted as an expense from that company?
You may be able to. I write it into the minutes, the startup minutes, that the company can reimburse you, and then it's up to your account to figure out how to do that.
Okay.
But yes, you can. Like the money, like when I have clients come and pay me, I say, you're obviously not set up yet because you're incorporating, but the money you pay me is your first business expense. Because usually it's deducted or counts toward your capital contribution to the business. So each and every year, you're going to have an annual report. Once you incorporate or do the S Corp or the LLC, you're going to have an annual report due once a year with the Illinois Secretary of State. So this is separate from taxes. It's going to be due on the first day of your anniversary month. And we're going to go over the different costs for that. But again, this is the time to go through and do your annual minutes as well, when that is due. So the annual report. So if, for instance, you're incorporated on May 13th, it's going to be May 1st. It's always due on the first day of your anniversary month from when you are incorporated. For the C Corp and S Corp, the filing fee is $100 in Illinois. For an LLC, it's $250. Again, there's no reason why that is. The S Corp late fee, if you're late, it's like $2 plus 50 cents per month. The LLC late fee is $300. Again, there's no reason for that. If it's more than 5 months late, and this is huge, the state will dissolve you. Because part of that fee you're paying to them is a franchise tax. You didn't pay your taxes, so they dissolve you. You can reinstate the business, but it costs a lot more money, especially in LLC. Sometimes it's $1,000 or more once you figure out all the fees they accumulate. For a corporation, it's less, but it does add up. So every year they're late. So I've had clients who never knew they had to file it. 4 years, they try to go get a loan, and they're saying you can't because you've been dissolved for 4 years. We have to go back and pay the filing fees for the last 4 years, plus the reinstatement fee and such, and the penalties. So important to get that annual report in on time. Okay, better late than never. We can always fix mistakes. You want to be sure, though, if it's more than 3 years with a corporation, you can lose your name. And that's a huge thing. So, and with an LLC, it's as soon as you're dissolved, you can lose that name. So someone can come and take that name from you with the Secretary of State. And then we have to go after them for comp and trademark issues and try and fix it, so keep that in mind. The biggest problem is if you're late, your liability protection goes into serious question. Because again, it's a trade-off, you have to do those corporate formalities, and if you're late, you may not have that, you won't, I won't say may, you won't have liability protection if something happens during that period of time. You're also potentially gonna lose your S Corp tax status as well. Usually if it's for a little while, you can get it back, but it could affect your tax status as well. Okay, any questions on annual reports? Okay. Illinois is really not hard to do an annual report. Like Nevada wants all of your financial history and everything. Illinois is just basic information and give you money. So get it in on time. So we're going to start going over contracts. Everyone needs to have a contract in the business. Doesn't matter what kind of business you have. You're going to have a service agreement or you're going to have a sales agreement. Anytime you hire someone for something, you should be having it in writing. Anytime you're giving service to a client, it should be in writing as well. Contracts go to your liability protection as a business. It's one of those three things we mentioned in the very beginning. You can have employment contracts, independent contractor contracts, your service or sales agreement, and leases. Those are the most common ones you're going to run into in your business. So service or sales agreement, most people hit on these. Like they try to write their own agreement, come up with a gentleman's agreement on their own. They're going to hit, what is the work to be performed? How much is it going to cost? Who is the customer? Sorry. They may date and sign it, and that'll be the end of it. But did they get all of this? This is where I come in, and as an attorney, I make sure you have a back door, you have an exit, who's going to own intellectual property. A lot of this is generally not covered in contracts unless it's written by someone who knows what they're doing. So you're going to have your company and not you as the party, and we're going to discuss how to sign a contract in a moment. What's the time frame for finishing? Because if you just say who, what, when, you're not going to have, okay, what's the deadline? You really have to have all of these defined. What if they're late? Am I going to I just cancel a contract for myself or one developer last night because she missed the deadline? And this is the second time she's done it. So I had a good back door to get out because she basically breached contracts. So you want to make sure you have those deadlines listed in there. What are the responsibilities of both parties? A lot of people say, I'm hiring you for services, you have to do all of this. Well, what does the client have to do? Because a lot of times you may be waiting on the client for information, for inputs, for whatever it is you need from them. So sometimes the client can breach the contract and keep you from doing your job because they haven't done what their responsibilities are. Intellectual property indemnification. You want to make sure that you're not going to be responsible for what the other party is doing. So if they create an issue, like maybe they're manufacturing a product and they create a faulty product, you want to make sure that they're going to indemnify you for what they did wrong, what their negligence was. The what ifs, are you going to have a warranty in there? What if something goes wrong? How are we going to handle it? And the biggest one, I think, is the exit. How are you going to get out of a contract? A lot of people know how to get into one, but how are you going to get out of one and get out of one without basically being ripped off? You want to make sure you have an exit, you have a way to cancel that contract, you need a back door, you need a way out that's not going to bring you and your company down with it if something goes wrong. And then the boilerplate. My boilerplate is about a page and a half long, and it's venue, jurisdiction, headings, severability, counterparts, all of that stuff that everyone's like, what is this? It's all legalese. But most cases are not one on who the parties are, how much do we pay each other, and what was supposed to be delivered. Most of the cases can be one in the boilerplate. So you want to make sure you have it in there and you have it in there well. You want to make sure that the venue and jurisdiction is where you want it so that you have favorable outcomes. You're not traveling, you're not having to hire an attorney from out of state. Things like that can be very costly now. And to answer your question, how to sign a contract. If you own a corporation or an LLC, this is how you're going to be signing the contract. So it's going to have the name of the company. You're going to have your name, but your title next to it. So if you own the company, you will be president, because that's who has signing power for contracts. And this is how you're going to name it. If you just sign your name, it's a personal contract. You have personal liability to guarantee that contract. So I see you shaking your head. You see this a lot. I've seen it a lot. People sign leases with just their name. No. It's a lease with the corporation. So any questions on contracts? Otherwise, we'll start on commercial leases. So besides employees, commercial leases are gonna be one of your biggest expenses. And I've seen commercial leases from 2 pages to 102 pages. So it completely depends on the landlord, what they have. I've seen a good 2-page lease, and I've seen a really good 102-page lease, and I've seen bad from everything in between. So it really depends on the content, quantity over quantity. So these are things that you want to hit on and kind of look at if you're going to try and do this on your own. I do recommend, of course, working with an attorney because there's a lot of terms on these, or maybe it's missing a lot of terms. I've had clients be presented with basically illegal contracts that would never even hold up in the state of Illinois. And they pulled it off the internet, the landlord did. So you have to be really careful. So is there a personal guarantee? We're going to go over what a personal guarantee is in a moment. Are all the partners listed on the lease? Who is the tenant? Is your liability insurance going to be sufficient? Is the landlord's liability insurance sufficient to cover if there is a fire or something that happens to your assets? And what does the lease say? So personal guarantee, this is the biggest thing that I fight for. You incorporate because you want to protect yourself from personal liability. What a personal guarantee does is put your personal liability right back on that contract. So usually and it completely depends on the landlord, some will not budge on this. They want their personal guarantee because if you're new in business, you could go out of business within a couple of years, and they know that. A lot of new businesses survive, but they want to hold you personally to that contract for the full term. So that's what a personal guarantee does. Even if your business closes, even if you go into bankruptcy, you're still going to be personally liable for the remainder of that lease. So if there are partners, should all partners in the business be listed on a personal guarantee? Is there joint and several liability for this? You really have to be careful when you're doing that. What if a partner leaves? I had that situation where a partner left because, he had a falling out with the partners, but he was leaving, the partners were letting him leave, but the landlord wouldn't let him out of personal guarantee on the lease. Why would he want to? So you have to be careful about that, especially if you're one of the partners in the business. And lease terms, read the lease. Most people are afraid, I don't blame you, it's all legalese. A lot of it doesn't make sense, but read the lease. And if you don't understand it, give me a call. I do free reviews of contracts and estate plans and stuff. I don't charge, and I'll tell you if it's good or if it's not and what to be careful about. And then if you need it modified or negotiated with the landlord, that's what I charge for. But I really try to be an advocate for small business owners, and I want them to not get taken or find themselves in a bad situation. So pricing. So you're going to compare rents to other places in the area. Is it competitively priced? Is it a high traffic area? All of that's going to factor into the price. What amounts of work is needed for the build out? So you're going to look into that. I had a client recently who opened a microbrewery, and everything was set up right for him. So you have to count that when you're comparing places, because you're going to save yourself like $1,000 on a build out if it's already set up. CAM and taxes. How many people in here know what CAM is? Yeah, if you got that on a lease, you wouldn't even know what it is. Don't just look at the base rent. You're going to look at all of the extras besides your rent. There's net leases and gross leases. Let's see. Gross leases include everything that is included in the lease. So it's going to cover common area maintenance, which is what CAM stands for. So it's going to cover snow removal, sidewalk repairs, glass repairs, everything. A net lease is giving you a base rent, plus you're going to pay extra for all these items, depending on how much it costs the landlord that year, how many tenants are in there. So if they're losing tenants, your rent's going to go up because there's less people to share with. So these are things to be careful about. It's hard to know with those net leases how much are you really going to be paying in rent. Let's see, term and renewal. I find it's best to get shorter terms with many renewal periods. We're still kind of in a renter's market, even though real estate is starting to come back. So if you get a good rate, get maybe a 3-year term, but get a lot of renewal options onto that. A general increase or escalation is 3% to 6% per year. Anything over that is still pretty high at this point, but it will start rising. So if you're considering getting a lease or a commercial space, now would be better than later. Renewal notices. I've had a few clients get tracked into leases because they say you have to notify us 6 months ahead of time whether you want to renew the lease Or I see you have to notify us 6 months or a year ahead of time whether you want to cancel the lease. So it's all in how the landlord words it. I try to get that down, and I also try to get in there that the landlord has to notify you when that time period comes up. Otherwise, you get out of having to give them that much notice. Okay. Personal guarantee, we went over. This is something that with some landlords you can negotiate. Maybe you have a personal guarantee for a year or 2 years, or if you pay well for a year, they'll drop the personal guarantee. So those are ways I like to negotiate those down. Prefer not to have it on there though. And partners. So if you have a personal guarantee who's listed, should all the partners be listed? Generally, yes, because it protects everyone in the business, but maybe you'll have part of that in the exit agreement that you would cover that guarantees that the person leaving isn't still on the hook for that. Who is the tenant? The tenant, again, is the business. It's not anyone personally. So remember that you're signing the contract properly. Another big one is measuring. I've had people, the landlord usually gives you a drawing. They say it's so many X square feet. How are they measuring that? A lot of people measure the square footage from wall to wall. Some landlords measure to the middle of the walls because they consider the electrical to be part of your rent, part of your space because it's servicing your area, your space. I've had someone who basically just didn't even measure correctly and was overstating it by 500 square feet. My client still went with the business and was paying the same amount, but at least she knew what she was getting because she had her contractor go through and measure. So again, I asked her, you still want the space, but you realize you're paying more now per square feet than maybe the place down the street that you were also looking at. So at least you know what you're comparing. And escalation, like I said, do the math. They'll say this year is this much, year 2 of the first term is this much. How much percentage is that actually going up every year? Because like I said, 3 to 6% is reasonable. I've seen as high as 18%, which is very reasonable. I've seen even higher than that actually. So just know what it is, because maybe they'll try to get you in the door and then they're just gonna, make the rent go sky high. So you want to watch for that. Any questions on commercial leases? Okay, intellectual property. We're just going to go over this quick, do an intro. It is going to be a part of your business no matter what it is that you're doing. Everyone's on social media. Intellectual property is a part of that as well. So we're going to go over, there's 3 kinds. There's copyright, trademark, and patents. I do not do patents. It's the one area law you have to be specially licensed and sit for a separate bar exam. But I do copyrights and trademarks. So the difference is copyrights covers anything that is written materials, books, magazines, sound recordings, photos, all of that is copyright. Trademarks covers company or product name, covers a slogan, and covers logos, so branding for your business. And patents are anything useful, anything invention. That would be something that's new, useful, and not obvious, or processes as well. Under copyright is also software code that's not patent. Some people think it's a patent, but it's not. So copyright. It's afforded to authors of original works of authorship, so literary, dramatic, musical, artists, carvings, anything artistic would be covered also by copyrights. So you can see some potentially no films, you have music, software. It gives the owner the exclusive right to do whatever they want with that for a certain period of time. Typically it's the life of the author plus 70 years. So even though someone dies, they still have protection, or the estate has protection for that for a chunk of time. So what do you do if you have something that's copyright? Who in here is planning on having a website or has one now? Has anyone copyrighted it? Did you put a copyright notice at the bottom of it? Okay.
Is that what you have to do?
There's 2 ways to do it. That's common law trademark, or common law copyright is when you put the copyright notice at the bottom. So this is an example. So you're going to put the copyright symbol, the name of who owns it, which is the company and not you, because it becomes a company asset if you name it in the name of the company, and put the year that it was created. If you update it, you can put the year range or the newest year. So if you ever see like 2014 to 2016, it's because they've updated it throughout those 2 years. And then you can also file the copyright with the Library of Congress. That affords you a lot more protection. It also makes a public record of it that you are claiming it, so if someone has it and you can prove that you filed the copyright, it's a lot easier to win a case against someone or to get them to stop using your copyright as well. Okay. So one thing on social media I want to say is try not to just go and pull images from anywhere on social media or from iStock, or someone else's website and use it somewhere. Getty Images, who owns like iStock and iCan Photos and stuff, they go after people. They have little web crawlers that find people who are using the photos without permission, and they're going after these people for large amounts of damages, which is pretty unreasonable. So just be careful. If you want to use a photo, get it from a reliable source. Pay for the subscription to iStock. It's not that much money. Or if you're on social media, share someone else's. Don't just take your picture and make it yours. Okay, so just be careful of social media, especially for your business. Because if it's used for commercial purposes, you're more liable than if it's just for personal use. And those are some samples of free places you can get images from. You can also do a Google search for that as well. Trademark. Who has good ideas for company names, slogans, logos? Got some ideas. Branding your business. If you go to a marketing seminar, branding is really important. It is what identifies you, your business, your service, your product. So branding is, of course, the company name. Like for me, I have AMC Legal as my company name. I have the slogan, serving your legal needs with personal attention, and then I have my logo, which was created. If someone is doing graphic design for you, if someone is doing web design for you, make sure you get the rights to everything they create in writing, because you want to own that. You don't want to, otherwise the author is going to own that unless it's given to you in writing. So you want to make sure you get that. Like for instance, I use a graphic designer. She didn't have a contract, so I made sure I sent her one that gave me the rights to everything she created for my business. And of course, it's a contract with the business. Again, not me personally. But if you ever do want to file a trademark or file a copyright, or if you want to prevent someone else from doing that, you really need to have those rights. And also, there's nothing to keep the graphic artist from going and using that for someone else or elements of yours and diluting your trademark or copyrights in that. So you want to make sure you get that in writing. So good branding, it gets people to recognize you just on site. So it is something that you're going to be, at some point, investing your money in. So you want to make sure it's protected work. Good advertising attracts customers. Something that it can't get diluted. So anyone in here call tissues Kleenex. Kleenex lost their branding on it because it became a common word for it. So hopefully we don't have that problem someday, right? That we're so well known that we lose it. But it is something that's really important to businesses. So common law trademarks. Have you ever seen a TM or an SM symbol? Does anyone know what that is? Yeah, it's common law trademark. So as soon as you use something, as soon as you create something, or you have ownership to that something, you can put the TM symbol on it and claim your trademark rights. It's common law rights, which means it's only located to your geographical location and in the business that you're doing. But if you file the federally registered trademark, that's what the R in the symbol is. Like for instance, I went ahead and filed mine. It gives you a lot more protections. It puts the public on notice that you have it because it goes into their database, which the public can search. But also, if you do have to file, a suit against someone, you get your attorney's fees back. There's also a presumption that they knew about yours because, again, it was filed in that public database, so it helps you a lot. Any questions on trademarks or copyrights?
Are they expensive to register a trademark? Or is that,
the filing fee is $225. My fees to do it is about $875 because I do the full trademark search as well and do the filing and everything with it.
Is there a specific form?
It is online only, but a lot of people who do it on their own get them denied. So it is something, again, you have to know what you're doing and get them to go through. And doing the trademark search is very important because you can file one and maybe you'll get it registered, but the USPTO only looks at their database. They don't look at what everyone else is using, the common law trademarks. So they don't look at that. So you don't want to be using something that someone in Indiana is using and maybe they haven't federally registered it, but it's the same company name or the same product name. You won't know if you just file it with the USPTO on your own. You would have to do that full trademark search. So it usually takes me about a week to do the full trademark search. It's pretty intensive.
Is it all done through like a web crawler type approach?
There are ones out there that do that. I've seen reports from those out there that do that. It's like $150 and they'll do a trademark search. But the issue is they just give, it's kind of a spew of information. And it's, 20, 30, 40, 50 pages long and you don't know what any of it is. Because they're not attorneys to tell you, yeah, you can go ahead and file, or this is not your worry, even though
Just
it's the
raw
same
data.
name. Yeah, it's raw data. So when I do it, I personally search, all 50 states and all 50 states trademark databases, because there's also, like Illinois, you can file a trademark in Illinois. I don't recommend it because it's not very useful. It's, because nowadays, if you're on the website or anything, you're in all 50 states, or even internationally. So you're more likely, or it's more useful to file a federal one. And that gives you for all 50 states. Okay. So here's the process again for filing a trademark. First, you do the trademark search. And that's going to find federal, but also common law ones I just discussed. Then you file the application, and then you're working with the government, so you wait. They go on a queue. It takes about 3 months before they even look at it. If they have any questions or they want additional information or they deny you, they issue what's called an office action. So you have the option to respond. A lot of times when I get those, I'm able to either fix what it is that they're looking at, or if they deny you because they say it's confusingly similar, I usually have an argument against that and have been pretty lucky getting those through. You're then, once you pass that process, then you're published in the National Gazette which again is an online publication now, for 4 consecutive weeks, every Tuesday for 4 weeks. And then you wait 30 days, because if someone is out there who maybe we missed in the trademark search, who has a common law trademark, they have 30 days to come and oppose your application. And then that's a whole other process. If that does happen, usually doesn't. And then you wait another while and then issue a certificate. So overall, at the quickest, it takes at least 6 months to do one. But you have protection from your filing date. So, because that's when you got it published in that database. So it is out there and it's public. So if someone tries to use one after you, you can still go and enforce your trademark. So tips, if you have graphics, software, anything that's created by someone else, get it in writing so that you own the intellectual property. Before you even use a business name, regardless of whether you want to trademark it or not, do a search. Do a search for the state of Illinois. If you call a Secretary of State, they'll check the state of Illinois, but they only check Illinois, and that's only checking incorporations and LLC. It's not checking sole proprietorships, partnerships, etc., which are not filed in the state of Illinois. So Google search is the domain name available. Those are good keys that you can look at. So these are some basic tips. Also, I do, again, for free, I'll check the Illinois, and I'll also check the USPTO to see if there's any direct hits. It's not a full trademark search, but at least you'll know if there's something you should avoid. I've unfortunately had clients who've gone through 50 names before they found one that was clear. It's becoming harder and harder these days. I mean, even I said I just started another business and I went through a whole bunch before they weren't clear. So you wind up with your 50th choice, but it's still good. And keep tabs if you do have a trademark, even if it's filed or not. Make sure you're keeping tabs, doing Google searches, whatever it is you need to do to monitor if someone else is using it. And if they aren't, tell them to stop. Or if they are on a website, you can also request that website often that they take it down if they're like posting from other people. This is the Millennium Copyright Act, so you can submit this. Yes?
So for selecting a business name and using it in Illinois, if someone in Florida is using the same name, can you still use it?
Well, as long as they don't have a federally registered trademark, I would normally say don't do it. Legally you probably can, but do they have a good reputation? Where do they practice? Does their business extend the state lines? It depends what type of business they are. I have people where, like, say you have ABC Corp and it's not taken, and people are saying, well, I want to do ABCD Corp, and Illinois will incorporate you into that. But you're being confused. What if they have a bad reputation? What if you build a really good reputation and that sends business their way? You really want to have something unique and different, and at least that you can identify yourself apart from everyone else. So those are things that we look into. The biggest thing, if you are going to file a trademark and you're interested in it, be the first one to file, don't delay. Because it's really the first to file, it's a lot easier for you. So if someone comes later on and tries to oppose you, they have to go through a lot of work to get yours knocked out. I've had clients who've used it 7 years and then someone else has filed. Well, to go and try to get them to unfile or to stop using it, now you're looking at a lot of attorney's fees. So be the first to file. Any questions on intellectual property? Okay, last topic today is going to be business succession planning. So I know a lot of people in here, you're at the beginning of your business, but you need to have an end game in mind. And we were talking about this earlier. we need to know what's gonna happen to my business. Am I just gonna close the doors and walk away when it comes time for me to retire? Is one of my kids or family members gonna take over the business? Am I gonna sell the business? Or is maybe one of my key employees gonna take over the business? So I just wanna talk a little bit. Different reasons for exiting the business, of course, death, retirement, disability. That's the one that can come up unexpectedly. And then generally, if you don't have at least a general idea in mind of what's going to happen, it could catch you off guard and really affect the business. So succession planning. I also do estate planning, and this is really part of the estate planning process. That's why I got into estate planning in the first place, because so many of my business clients needed it done. And a lot of this has to do with if you have a partner. If it's just you, then you're going to be looking at, am I going to pass it to a family member? Am I going to sell it? And how are we going to take care of this in the estate plan? Maybe my spouse will take care of it if I'm disabled or if I pass away. So yeah, again, if you have one owner of a business, it's going to go to a spouse, it's going to go to your children. You're going to either sell the business, maybe your book of assets, maybe you sell the assets, or maybe you just wind up closing the business or selling it if you think it's worth enough. If you have a business partner, is your spouse going to take your share and be a partner with the other partner? Because if you don't have any plan, that's pretty much what's going to happen by estate law. Is the family member going to take your share? Or will the other partner buy them out? So you have to determine what's best for you guys if you are in a partner situation. So the estate plan. So you can be proactive and you can prearrange all of this. You can prearrange to sell to someone. Maybe you know someone in the industry who, if something happens to me, they may want my book of business, they may want my manufacturing process or my assets. You can prearrange that if X happens, you're going to buy from me. I've done this agreement with people where it's vice versa. So they've done a mutual buyout agreement and just come up with a formula for what it's going to cost. You know, it's usually X number of years back, whatever the profits were times a factor. You get it all figured out. And then they can pay you over time. So the family gets some income out of the business and the business can keep going. The other thing is you can do is just pass it on to family members, pass it on to your children or to your spouse. If you have a partner, you can do what's called a buy-sell agreement. This is something I really recommend. I think it's the best situation to handle it if you do have a partner. So you have two partners in business. We're going to go back to Jack and Jill. They each own that software development company 50-50. If something happens to Jack, then Jack's portion of the business is going to go to his wife or to his kids, depending on who's left, who survives them. And then they're going to be in business with the other partner. And hopefully they get along. Hopefully they have the same vision for the business. Hopefully they have the same business ideas. But they're going to be in business together. What a buy-sell agreement is if something happens to Jack, Jack's share is going to go to Jill. So Jill's going to own the business. And Jill has life insurance on Jack, and that life insurance is going to go to family members. So that's a lot better. So Jill's going to own the business. She's already the one doing the business. Frankly, that's probably the way it deserves to be. And Jack's family is going to get money, and they don't have to worry about running the business anymore. Okay, so that's usually the preferred way to go through it. My best advice is whether you're a sole person in the business, you have a partner, you have a wife, you have kids, just discuss it. What's going to happen? If this business keeps growing, especially if it's a business that you are relying on for your income. You know, you're not just a startup and it's producing money and that's what you're relying on. Make sure that you discuss it. How are we going to handle that? Are you covered by life insurance and such so that your family is taken care of? Come up with a plan and, of course, implement the plan. Don't just talk about it. So any questions on any of this? Yes, sir.
On business succession, if I, for example, am a sole proprietor, so Chapter S, I assume I issue shares, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Can I issue those shares in favor of an estate and trust?
Yes, what you would do is you would take that S Corp stock certificate, which is again good, not required in Illinois, but a good idea to have. Again, another example is estate planning, and you would fund it into the trust. So the trust is the one that owns it.
Trust is the one that owns the company.
The company, but you would either be trustee, probably trustee on that portion of the trust that owns the business. So that way, if something passes, or if you pass or something happens to you, it automatically is owned by the trust, and your trustee can handle the business. The only issue that can come up is if you own, like, so recently I did a doctor, he's a psychologist. Well, only doctors can own a doctor's business, so he had to elect a special trustee who is someone who would be able to take care of that professional part of the business. Whereas his wife can still do all the accounting and management, which she does now, but she can't legally own it. So that was something that was interesting to come up.
In effect, the trust could make the decisions, for example, on dissolution of the business.
Yes, but the trust only 6 months to a year. I mean, either you're gonna wind up the business, you're gonna sell the business, or it's gonna be, this share is gonna be passed on. It generally doesn't just stay in there and be.
But you have to tell the trust what to do with the business.
Right, right. We would write that into the trust as to what's gonna be done. Good question. Anyone else? Yes.
What is the usual time to form an S corp or an LLC from when you start to finish, and a usual average cost with state expenses, legal expenses, things of that sort?
S corp, I think with the Secretary of State, if you do regular filings, 2 to 3 weeks. If you do their expedited filing, they guarantee a 24-hour turnaround, but I've gotten them in as little as 6 minutes before, so sometimes they're very quick. But yeah, it doesn't take that long to set up the company. And then when I do it, like we do regular processing, we send it down the date that you incorporated, we can get that on EIN, we can get everything else, get all the paperwork done while we're waiting for it to be mailed back. It takes them about a week to mail it back to you once you've been incorporated.
But I mean the time as far as setting up the rules for board of directors and
Well, if I do it, I can get it done today.
because most of it is somewhat of a template.
Yes, yeah, the only thing that comes up is that you really need to specialize or customize is like a shareholder or operating agreement. So you really have to have the partners coming together on those. We can get everything else done pretty quickly.
Okay.
Because, I mean, we do so many of these, I do quite a few. Yeah.
From a liability standpoint, the company begins with a new product. Is it best for them to, set up a subchapter S right away? Because even before the proof of concept and everything happens, or does it really matter when they?
I'd say set it up right away for several reasons. One is you can expense all of those and you can take a loss. You might not be able to take the loss that year that you earn it, but you can carry it forward until you start making money and then you can have all those expenses.
So for tax reasons, it's good to do it as quickly as possible.
Yeah. But also then, if you ever do go for a business loan, how long have you been in business? So usually you want to have it at least age 2 years. It also looks good just the general public to say I've been in business these extra 2 years. And then you can also go through the whole process of setting up the bank account and not be in such a rush to set it up. Because a lot of times people are like, my product's coming out, everything's happening, and I gotta get this set up, and then you're paying the extra fees for expediting. So it's nice to have it all set up. The only con is that you're gonna have to do the accounting and you have to do the tax return. So if you're using accountants, you might have that expense. If you're using like tax cut or TurboTax, it might not be that expensive for you to do. Because the first few years you might not be having a lot going on. Okay, yes, sir.
If you have an LLC and you want to convert it to an S corp, that can be done at any point throughout the year. It doesn't have to be at the end of a fiscal or
I believe when you do a late election S corp, it's going to take effect the following tax year. So if you file it like even April, it won't take effect until January 1st of the following year. So that's if you did file it within those first 75 days, then it will take effect the next following tax year. Yeah, so it's not something you just elect on and off that when the IRS does restrict you that way.
So it sounds like if you have the cash to pay all those fees and all that, the sub S, you should just go to the sub S, because you could always drop the sub S at some point if you wanted to, right?
You could, but why would you want to?
I don't know, but
Unless
you
you're
could.
going public.
Yeah, and then you go to the C corp structure,
Yeah, you could.
You wouldn't go from an S to an LLC.
No, you can't. You would have to dissolve the S corporation and start up an LLC.
Right.
Which sometimes we have to do if people are like doing those investments and they file them properly. So it's usually good to talk to an attorney first because it can wind up saving you hundreds of dollars if you file the wrong way.
Right.
Yeah, or tax money because people were like, I didn't know I had to file an S corp, a tax election, and then they're overpaying in taxes. So. Anyone else? Yes.
With the liability on a sole proprietorship, what kind of business is good? Is that good for?
It's generally for people who are at the hobby stage. So if you don't know it's going to be a profitable business, you're just trying to do proof of concept. Generally, that's where I tell people, you're not making any money, So you're gonna be spending maybe $1,000 on incorporating, accounting fees, and doing all this work, but you don't even know if it's gonna be a profitable business yet. So I tell them, do it for a year, do it for 2 years. When you see you're starting to make money and decent money, then come and incorporate. And then it also depends on what type of business they're doing, because if they're gonna have liability issues, at least get liability insurance. But if it's something that's maybe a little bit higher liability, I would say just go ahead and incorporate. So it does depend on what they're doing.
In my business, E&O insurance coverage is critical, you gotta have it. That only applies to certain industries, right?
Right, so there are certain things, especially insurance, they have all those cutouts, things that are not covered. So, a lot of people say, why have insurance, why should I incorporate? Well, there's times when insurance doesn't cover it, and you want to have it separated out liability. There's times maybe you lapsed on paying something, and you don't have the insurance, or you're sued for something and it's over the insurance amount that they get the money for. Usually they'll settle for the insurance because it's simpler and easier, and they can walk away and have that chunk of money. But you never want to put your personal assets that you've been working toward, your retirement accounts, your car, your home, basically your entire being at risk by not being incorporated. Sorry, yeah.
Oh, that's okay. A service business that's 100% service consulting, let's say,
Okay.
does it make sense to incorporate right away and it's just one person?
Depends how much money you're making.
Okay.
I've had an accountant tell me if you're making $30,000, it's definitely worth it for the tax purposes.
Sure.
But again, you're looking at liability, depending on what kind of service you're doing. For me, I incorporate it right away.
Yeah, that's the main reason I would think to incorporate is liability.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you don't have that personal liability protection unless you are.
And it's not for tax purposes. I mean, I understand accounting, it actually would be accounting, but it would be more like, it's kind of like an understanding of, do you incorporate for liability purposes, or where does the certificate of insurance come in? That kind of thing. So at what point does liability is the main reason for me to incorporate.
Okay, well then you're gonna have that personal liability protection. And it's layers. Like I said, there's 3 layers of liability and protection. So incorporating is just one.
Okay.
Insurance is another layer, and then having good contracts is another
I
layer on
gotcha.
top of
Okay.
it. But the only thing that protects your personal assets, insurance can lapse or not cover a situation, or be over that. So you really want to have that incorporation.
Because
Just separate
it
out.
separates the
Yeah.
corporate from the personal. That's not the main reason.
Yes.
Is there any large addition for a nonprofit corporation?
You're still going to be set up as a corporation, but it's a nonprofit corporation. And then there's a lot more filings after you incorporate. So with the state of Illinois, that part's still the same, different forms. But you're going to be either a nonprofit or a nonprofit with a 501c3 designation. The 501c3 lets you, your donors can deduct it on the personal tax return. You can go after donations. You can go after grants. So it opens the doors a lot to really build that business. And that application can take a while. It's a mini book that you have to send them. They now offer the easy form, which I don't recommend, but that can take less than 3 months to file, and it's like a 4-page application. But a lot of people are not getting the grants that they're applying for because they weren't fully vetted. The easy form is easy, it's quick, they don't fully vet you. So a lot of people are losing money that they could have had by doing the easy form instead of doing the full process.
What's the average length of time for the full process?
It takes me a couple of weeks to do the work, but usually clients are gathering a lot of information for me, so that makes it 1 month to 2 months sometimes. It's before we can file that application, and then the processing time is anywhere from 6 to 18 months. Because again, we're IRS, they're understaffed, underfunded, and you just go into a queue and wait.
And is that then like trademarks that once you file, you can
Yeah,
make
it
an
can go
assumption?
back 27 months from the date of incorporating. If you file within 27 months of incorporating the nonprofit, it can be retroactive those 27 months. But the issue is, if you got some decent sized donations, those people might want to go back and amend their tax returns, but most people aren't going to go. You would have to go back and amend tax returns at that point. But so I say, the soonest you can, like you incorporate and you do it, because you don't want to have to be dealing with retroactive tax return amendments. Sir?
If you want to run a business out of your home and you don't want that known, you want to use a post office box.
Yeah.
So can an attorney register with the state as agent and not disclose?
Yeah, what you can do, if you're a corporation and LLC, it's different, because LLC lists the members, but you would want to have a business address if you're an LLC. If you're a corporation, you can have a separate registered agent, and same with an LLC, a separate registered agent, which I'm a registered agent for a lot of my clients. So it's my firm's name, my firm's address that shows out on the Secretary of State website. But after you've been in business a year and you file your first annual report, the president and secretary's name and address will show up on the
So you
public
can't
database.
hide it.
No, and for LLCs. But again, if you have a business address,
What about
and for the
subchapter
president and
S?
secretary, you can list a PO box, but not for the registered agent.
What about subchapter S?
That's the same, it's the
Same?
same, yeah, same for a C Corp and an S Corp, that's how the state shows it. So your name will show up, but you can list a separate business address. I, of course, always recommend having not your personal home address listed because you just never know these days.
But not a post office box.
No, well, only for the president and secretary, not for the registered agent.
So if you're
What the
sole-
registered agent is the name and address where they will serve service of process in the state of Illinois if you're ever sued or receive a subpoena. So it has to be a physical person with a physical address, someone over the age of 18 who's available during normal business hours. So that's how they can sue you in the state of Illinois, so it is required. But then the president and secretary can have a PO box or virtual offices, I highly recommend.
So if you're a sole proprietor, you can be president and avoid that.
But your name and address will still show up after
So
the
you
first
need a
year.
virtual address.
Yes, you can list a different address. Your name will show up, so you can't really hide that unless you hire someone else to be president and secretary. But the address, you can make a PO box for that. Yes.
If you took a sub S and put the certificate in a trust, and the trust had a bank's address or something like that, you know,
They usually don't allow you.
they don't,
No, you could list the trustee's name, which is usually going to be the owner of the business anyway, so, yeah. But the president and secretary is the person who's working for the business, it's not the trust.
and would the trustee, in that case, would the trustee be the registered representative, you know, the one that, you know, for
That's
legal-
whoever you have trustee over your assets
Mhm.
in the estate plan. So that's a totally different process you're gonna go through. So it's like the executor and the trustee, where your power of attorney is going to be, and we coordinate with that. You can have, like I have one client, she owns like 4 or 5 different franchises in the Chicagoland area, and she had a different trustee for her business and a different trustee for her personal. Because in order, the trustee for the franchise had to be someone who was approved by the franchise. So she put her partner on as trustee for that.
I'm on the board of an international foundation, just the Chicago chapter of
Okay.
that. And how far back do we need to have minutes in our corporate book?
From the date of existence.
Oh, my God.
I said I've gone back 20 years for one client, 15 years for another.
Yeah,
It can be done, it should be done if you haven't done it.
that's brutal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But better late than never, because again, if you're ever sued, they will ask for it, you have to go follow the proper formalities. The problem that comes up is if, maybe you sold a business and or you bought a business, and you don't have all that paperwork from before. So when you're going through the sale process, you gotta make sure that's all done ahead of time.
I don't think our records are made.
Talk to me, we'll figure it out. Yes, Beth.
I have a specific tax question, it's very easy.
Okay.
I started off as a sole proprietorship in May of this year, incorporated as an S corp beginning of September.
Okay.
I've not submitted my 2553.
Okay.
One of the questions is, when do you want
The S corp
effective
election to
date?
to your incorporation date.
I'm not rolling in a dough now, so does it behoove me to have my
Yeah, it's your incorporation date.
my operation date? Okay. So I'm not gonna put 2017 for the effective.
Well, not for the effective date of the S election, but probably what day do you expect to receive income? I think that's actually the EIN application. So, yeah, the EIN application has a bunch of things that can be filed wrong too, so be careful. But yeah, if you elect that you're gonna be taking income, you can't do it too far out, but you can't do it too soon because they're gonna expect to see those tax returns, whatever date you have put in there. So be careful, if you said like September 1st, they're gonna expect to see tax returns for payroll for this quarter. Whereas if you report it next year, they'll start looking for those tax returns in that quarter.
Oh,
Okay, are we all good? All right, I hope you all enjoyed it, found it useful. If you ever have questions, like I said, you free consult for your meetings and everything, so just let me know. I have some